First of all, this presentation is designed is not designed to glorify assassins. If anybody gets glorified here today, it will be a White House police officer who was killed in the line of duty in 1950 when he defended Truman. And there's a plaque at the Blair House. Now, the Blair House is the vice president's residence. And there is a plaque on the fence honoring the man whose name just escapes me right now when I get to it. But he died in the line of duty trying to defend President Truman from a home invasion. And I'll be going through the history of attempts on American presidents. All right. Now, we all know Julius Caesar. The executive branch and the legislative branch sometimes have difficulties getting along. So he was done in with knives. And the word assassin comes from hashishin, or user of marijuana. It was a group in the Middle East where they would psych people up with drugs, marijuana in particular, and tell them that if they died in the line of duty killing somebody, don't worry, you'll get even a better high in heaven. Okay. So. No one ever came back and told them that they were disappointed, so, it continued to work as a motivator. With the invention of firearms, we now had, knives were now going to be supplemented with firearms. And the very first case that we have, do I have to stand here all the time?
No.
The camera's going to pick me up? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, the very first assassin to use a firearm was a guy named Balthasar Gerald. And what happened was, this is sort of government-sponsored terrorism. Philip II of Spain, who was Catholic, was pissed at William the Silent of Orange and offered 25,000 crowns, which was considered a lot of money, to anybody who would off William the Silent. Okay? And Balthasar here decided he would do it. So he goes to the Netherlands, and I understand that the castle where he did it, the 2 bullet holes are still in the wall. So they went through the guy. His first problem was to get his hands on a gun. So he took advantage of private sales, or as our enemies like to refer to it as the gun show loophole. He went up to some of the bodyguards and offered them money for 2 wheel-lock pistols. And somebody sold him 2 wheel-lock pistols. And he went into the palace, saw his target, fired 2 shots, and then had a plan to run to the battlements, jump into the moat where he had already hidden a bladder, pigskin bladder, to help him float across, get on his horse and take off. Unfortunately, he tripped, got captured, got tried, and if you're really interested in Wikipedia, Balthasar Gerald, he had the most gruesome death. I mean, in those days, cruel and unusual punishment was the SOP. And it's really gory, but for all people who want gore, please look up Balthasar Gerald on your Wikipedia page. Okay. Now, when it came to presidents of the United States, all right, the first president to be assaulted while in office was Andrew Jackson. He was aboard a riverboat behind a card table, probably playing cards, when a former naval officer who had been thrown out of the Navy went up and slapped him. And he had trouble getting up because the chair was in the way. And he said, I don't want anyone to stand between me and an assailant. I don't want anyone to exact revenge. Okay? A couple of years later, he's coming out of the Capitol, and a guy named Lawrence, who's well-dressed, looks like he belongs there, comes out with a derringer, walks up to Jackson, and the thing goes, pop. Jackson gets, needless to say, pissed off. So he takes his walking cane, starts beating the guy. The guy pulls out his second derringer. The gun goes pop. Well, Davy Crockett and some other congressmen grab this guy, and they haul him off. The next day, Thomas Hart Benton, who's senator from Missouri, takes the 2 guns, puts a new blasting cap on the first gun, cocks it, boom! Takes the second gun, puts a new blasting cap on it, cocks it, boom! All right? The Smithsonian figured out 100 years later that the odds of 2 blasting caps not igniting the powder were 1 in 125,000. So Jackson, the Lord was with him that day. The next day he started carrying a handgun again. He thought it was a conspiracy by the Whigs, which are the anti-Jackson people, to do him in. So him and Van Buren started to do concealed carry. All right? The next president to be assaulted was Abraham Lincoln in August of 1864. He was riding his horse when he heard a gunshot and his hat flew off, and there was a hole found in it. And then, of course, in April of 1865, he is assassinated by John Wilkes Booth, who also uses a percussion derringer, but carries a Bowie knife for backup. But once he shoots the president, he uses the knife on Rathburn, who was the president's escort that night, jumps out, gets on his horse where he has a Spencer repeating carbine, and takes off. And later on, he's shot by Boston Corbett using an 1860 Colt, and that's, the most famous, assassination as far as history is, Lincoln and its consequences. The next president to be the subject of an assassination was Garfield. A guy, he's a Polish background, and so I should know how to pronounce his name, but I never can get it all right, because we Polacks love to use double consonants all the time. All right?
Ghetto.
Was it?
Ghetto.
Ghetto.
Like you're saying guitar, but drop the R.
All right.
Ghetto.
Ghetto used a British bulldog. It's that gun right here. Now, his family tried to get him committed a few times because his elevator didn't go to the top floor. And they didn't have any luck. And he borrowed $15 from them, went to a gun shop, and he liked the British bulldog. Because one had been used, I think, in somewhere else, and he liked the gun. And they had one for $15, like this, it's a blue finish, and one for $16 with ivory grips. And he goes, "Can I have the ivory grip model for $15? And the guy goes, "No, you can have the $15 model for $15. Why do you need the ivory grips? "Because I want it to look really nice in the museum." Okay? Whenever I use, this is going to be sitting in a museum, and ivory grips would really make it look nice. Okay? No. All right? Takes the gun. President Garfield's in the train station, goes up, puts the round into the president, and runs away. Nobody notices where he's going. Somebody points and says, "Okay, I think that's him over there." A policeman grabs him before he can get into I was going to say cab, but we're talking about a wagon, some kind, not the yellow cab. They take him to the police station, then they search him, and they find the gun. Okay? Well, they got the suspect, they got him, they got the gun, and he basically admits to it, so there's no problem. The president, though, lingers for about 11 weeks and probably dies more from medical malpractice than necessarily the bullet. Because when they did the autopsy on Garfield, they found the bullet, and it was nowhere near where the doctors had been probing all that time. Because they didn't have X-ray in those days. And Thomas Edison had his own little invention. He thought he could find the bullet. He told them, "I think it's there," and they were like, "No, it's over here."
Alexander Graham Bell.
What? Oh, sorry, Alexander Graham Bell. Alexander Graham Bell thought he had an invention that would tell you where bullets are.
But the doctor used it wrong.
Yeah. So Garfield dies. I think he dies in New Jersey. He's down in
Long Branch.
Long Branch. Okay, he comes to Long Branch, New Jersey, and that's where he dies. The pistol that he wanted in the museum so everybody can look at it, admire it, goes to the Smithsonian, and it disappears. No one knows where it went. My guess is somebody said, "F you, in having this in a museum," took it out of the museum, went to the Potomac, and chucked it in. Either that or we have the gun right here. Okay. I know for those of you who got tired of searching for the Holy Grail. All right. The guy was a full-blown nut job. Okay? Now, that's something we're going to run into a lot. The guy that shot Jackson, he claimed he was the king of England, Richard III, who had died a couple hundred years before, and that the Bank of the United States owed him a lot of money, plus the respect that he should have as the new president of the United States as well as the king of England. Okay? The court agreed. His elevator did not go to the top floor, and he gets put away in a mental asylum. Okay? This guy is certifiably even better nuts. In his court trial, he gets up every now and then and starts singing. Okay? Well, they decide they're not going to put him in a mental institution, even though he probably deserves it. They're going to hang him. And his last request is, before he gets hung, to sing a new song he wrote, going, "I'm going to thee, Lordy." So they let him sing, and then they hang him. All right? The gun is gone. But before it disappeared, the Smithsonian had taken a picture of it. And if you go on the internet or anywhere else, they'll always show you the photograph of the firearm, all right? And it's from the Smithsonian Institution, Division of Armed Forces History. And if you come up here, you'll see we have the exact same pistol, except ours is nickel-plated. The next president to face a problem was McKinley. And McKinley is going to be running into an anarchist who just doesn't particularly care for government, all right? And he uses a top rate 32 that he hides in a handkerchief, like he's injured or something. And he goes up to McKinley and shoots him. Now, one of the questions you always have is, what do you do with a historical firearm? Do you put it on display? Does that glorify the action? There's a security problem. In Buffalo, here's how they solved the problem. They have the original gun. It's in a safe. Serious historians or special people, they'll pull it out and show it to you. Being smart, they probably went to a gun show, bought one just like it, and that's the one that's on display. And people have tried to steal it, okay? So they played it smart. The gun that's on display is similar to this. The real gun they have, okay? Now, the person who did this, so the anarchist, all right, it took about, I think, it took like 2 months for him to be executed. In those days, justice was very swift. You know, I think within a month or so after the president died, so did the assassin. All right? He bought the gun for $4.50 in a pawn shop. And he paid for it with his life. Now, the next person to become threatened was Theodore Roosevelt as an ex-president. Now, Theodore Roosevelt had been president. He made the mistake when he became president because the president was assassinated. He's the youngest man to ever hold a job. He had a good number of years ahead of him, but he made a stupid mistake when he got elected on his own. He said, I'm not going to run again. And then 4 years later, he regretted it. But he had said publicly, I'm not going to run. And his good friend at that time, Howard Taft, runs. And then the two of them have disagreements on policy and so forth. So he decides to run for president in 1911 to become president in 1912. There was a barkeeper in New York who was one of those people who all through his life had gotten the low cards in the deck. He had been orphaned at an early age, was taken in by other family members who died early age. His fiancée was killed in a fire aboard a steamship. I mean, the world just crapped on this guy. He decided that he had dreams from McKinley, and McKinley was popping up in his dreams telling him, you got to kill Teddy because Teddy killed me. Okay? So another guy whose elevator is not going to the top floor, right? He decides he's going to stalk Teddy Roosevelt and get him. First thing though, he needs a gun. So he goes to a pawn shop or gun shop in New York City, and he goes to buy a Colt Police Positive, nickel-plated 4-inch with the rubber grips. And the serial number of that gun is 58714, okay, in case one of you have it. But he runs into a problem. It's now 1911. A corrupt New York politician by the name of Sullivan has to protect the criminal element that's Irish from the criminal element that's Jewish or Italian. So they passed a law that you could not buy a pistol without a police permit. And you could not carry a handgun without a police permit. So he goes to buy the gun. You know, in the past he would have walked in, given him the money, walked out with a gun. Now he's told, where's your police permit? I don't have one. Well, there's a loophole in the law. Will you by any chance live outside of New York City? Yeah. I can sell it to you if I remove the firing pin. So they remove the firing pin, put it in a little bag, and sell him the pistol. He then goes to Buffalo and has a gunsmith put the firing pin back in again. Okay? So he starts stalking Teddy Roosevelt. And when Roosevelt's in Milwaukee, he's in the crowd, has the pistol. Boom! Shoots Teddy Roosevelt. Crowd jumps on the guy, takes him away. Roosevelt stands up there. Roosevelt was wearing a coat. Inside his inside pocket, he had a 50-page speech folded in half. In his shirt pocket, he had his glass case, which was metal. The bullet goes through the jacket, through 100 pieces of paper, through the metal glass case, and embeds between his ribs. Roosevelt takes out his handkerchief, coughs into it, no blood comes out. He then goes, takes more than a bullet to kill a bull moose. He then proceeds to pull out his speech, which now has two .38 caliber redactions on each page, and starts giving an hour-and-a-half speech. A little blood dripping down on his shirt. He then checks into the hospital, where they make him stay for 2 weeks. All right? The gun was in .38 Smith & Wesson, or .38 Colt New Police, which at that time was now smokeless loads, but they had to worry about them being used in a lot of the older guns, so it probably didn't have the full bite of a .38 S&W does today. All right? So Teddy Roosevelt survives. All right? The next president to be in danger was a president-elect, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He is giving a speech in Florida, big political get-together. A guy named Giuseppe Zangara, and there's some question there, conspiracy and so forth. Zangara buys himself a pistol, .32, but he's on the short side. So he knows where the cavalcade's going to go. So he brings a metal folding chair with him, sets it up, climbs on top of the chair where it starts rocking. And all of a sudden, here comes Roosevelt in the car. So pop, 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 5 rounds. He fires 5 shots. 4 of them hit people. None of them hit Franklin Delano Roosevelt. But one hits Mayor Chervenak of Chicago. And Chervenak dies. And he's tried in Florida and sent to, Zangara is tried in Florida and sent to the electric chair. All right? And there's always been a question, was he aiming at FDR or was he aiming at Chernak? Because Frank Nitti and the mob hated Chernak. They wanted him out. So we'll never know, because he went to the chair without explaining necessarily what he would basically said. I'm an anarchist. They know they're politicians. I just want to kill politicians. All right. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Harry Truman was President of the United States when the White House was being renovated, when they found out that some of the floors were starting to give out, and the White House was in bad shape. So as a temporary residence, he's going to live in the Blair House, which is usually the Vice President's residence. 2 guys who are Puerto Rican nationalists or terrorists, depending on your point of view, decide that they will help the cause of Puerto Rican independence. They can kill the president. And the 2 of them are going to be well armed. One's going to carry, okay, I love this, phone at no time at all. This better not be anybody important. I know exactly what it is. They're calling me to be substitute tomorrow. Okay. Now, one is armed with a Walter P38. The other is going to be armed with a P08 Luger, 9mm. All right? Probably war bringbacks. This is right after World War II. They plan to ambush the guards, break into the Blair House, find Truman, and shoot him. That's their plan. The first guy, the guy with the Luger, this is really simultaneous. The man with the Luger walks up to a police officer, White House police, uniformed police officer, fires 3 rounds, center mass, and starts running toward the door. The other guy runs up to the other police officer on duty, gun goes click. It's P38. The guard starts reaching for his .38. There's a struggle. Whether the guy puts another round in, he shoots the police officer in the knee. Okay? He starts running toward the door. In the meantime, there are other officers in plain clothes. They hear the gunfire. They come running forward. Now shots are being exchanged. The man with the Luger empties the Luger, firing at them. He's about to change the magazine when Truman pops up in the window and is looking down to see what the story is. At that point, he gets tackled to the ground by a Secret Service agent. While the guy is trying to load his Luger, remember the first guy that was shot? Coffelt? I think it's Leon Coffelt. he has recovered enough to pull out his official police, fire one round, hits the guy that shot him right above the ear, killing him instantly. Guy drops. The man with the P-38 is still exchanging fire when one of the plainclothes officers, who the day before had fired a perfect qualification score, takes his detective special, fires a round, hits him in the head with a 158 grain round nose, which bounces off, taking a good part of his scalp and knocking him unconscious. Okay? The first guy that was shot, all right, police officer, he is going to take him to the hospital, and he is going to die 4 hours later. And that is police officer Leslie Coffelt. Okay? He dies. Like I said, he's the only person that died defending the president, actually, losing his life. And as I said, they got the plaque. The other guy goes to the hospital. They come to the hospital. He recovers. They have a trial. Now, because it was Washington, D.C., it's a federal crime. And then Jimmy Carter, the guy who gave away the Panama Canal, later on releases him. And he goes back to Puerto Rico, where he's met as a hero by the Puerto Rican nationalists. All right? The next assassination is going to be John F. Kennedy, which is, of course, the one that a lot of us remember. I was in high school, I remember the announcements and the whole bit. And that, of course, is always going to be controversial because even today, here we are, almost 2018, there are still documents that are locked up secret. They were supposed to be released a couple of months ago, and the CIA and the FBI, so God knows how much stuff is there that is hidden away forever, right?
Hello?
First problem was, okay, the rifle that he used. All right, this is a Model 38 Carcano. What had happened is the Italians had decided that their 6.5 was not an adequate battle cartridge, so they created a gun in 7.35. And then when war started in 1940, they decided having two calibers was not a smart move, so they started making the gun at Turney in 6.5. So most of the guns are made in 1940 or 1941. This one here is a BB prefix. The gun Oswald used is C2766, I think, but it's got a C in front of it. So if you run into one at a gun shop, people are going to argue forever. I'm a firm believer that it could have been done with a 6.5 Type 38. The question is, how did Oswald do it? Is Oswald left eye dominant or right eye dominant? Never found out. The reason I ask is this gun can only be loaded from the top with a clip. So you had to mount the scope on the side. Now if he's right eye dominant and he's got to use the scope, not exactly a good cheek weld. If he's left eye dominant, it's perfect. Okay? Now the FBI claimed that the gun was the scope. Okay, in the movies, the scope and the crosshairs, point of aim, point of impact, every time is perfect. In real life, we know it doesn't happen. First of all, you're going to have offset. It's not going to be in line with the bore. The FBI claimed that the scope was off a lot because they said you needed some more shims to really line it up. Did Oswald use the iron sights? Now, here's the thing. These iron sights are set at 300 yards. 300 meters, sorry, metric system, European. At the range where he shot Kennedy, the gun would have fired 10 inches high using the sights. As an ex-Marine, was he aiming for body mass and the bullets hit the neck and the head? Don't know. The ammunition that Oswald used was another controversial thing. Shouldn't he have, beat up World War II ammunition? No. He used Winchester. 6.5 mm Mannlicher Carcano type ball, DA 23196 or RD 27, Western Cartridge Company, division of Olin Industries, East Altoon, Illinois. The United States Marine Corps ordered this ammunition in the 1950s. What for? They don't have any Carcanos. It was a paper exercise. It went to the CIA. The CIA was going to use it in the Balkan countries for some kind of operation that never came through. So they sold it on the surplus market to Cummings International Arms, who then sold it to a lot of distributors. So the ammunition that he was using was maybe 10 years old. And it was quality American Winchester ammunition. Okay? The sling he used. Okay, this is an issue Italian sling. That was a question, because it looked like a guitar strap or something for a long time. We're trying to figure out what it was. Many years later they solved the mystery. It came off of a Air Force holster. This is the strap. This was an Air Force holster that you wore across your chest for your snub-nosed 38 if you were a pilot or whatever. And a lot of these holsters, this is my second one, the snaps are broken. For whatever reason, a lot of them didn't hold up, and they were sold as surplus. So a lot of them are usually found in pretty good condition, but you'll find a broken snap. But this is the shoulder strap that Oswald somehow acquired and used as a sling for that particular rifle. All right? Now, the next president to run into problems after that was Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford had the misfortune of running into two left-wing females in California. They weren't Pelosi and Feinstein, who had limited knowledge of firearms. And God blessed him. He was in Sacramento, which is the capital, to see Jerry Brown and some others, and a girl named Squeaky Fromm, who had been part of the Manson cult. Her boyfriend had a 1911 made in 1913, probably a CMP gun or something like that. And he had taken her to the range. She had fired it, and she told him she needed a gun for protection. He said no, because she was getting her own apartment, whatever. She then stole his 1911 with a loaded clip. Okay? She is standing there, inches 2 feet away from Gerald Ford, and goes, "It didn't go off, it didn't go off." People grab it, knock it down to the ground. The reason it didn't go off is she had fired the gun, but she missed the lesson. It was loaded, it just wasn't chambered. So she gets knocked to the ground, taken into custody, and spends a good amount of time in jail. 3 weeks later, Ford's back in California. This time he's in San Francisco. And a woman by the name of Sarah Jane Moore, who somebody described as a cult member looking for a cult to join. Okay? She had some problems, I think 3 husbands, that might have been a problem. Anyway, she had a .44 caliber revolver. Don't know whether it was one of those or what. She had a .44. She was also an FBI informant. Got paid to spy on her friends in the left wing. She also was on the Secret Service watch list, as a possible threat. The day before the president is to be in Sacramento, she gets caught carrying a .44 caliber pistol, don't know the make or model, and 113 rounds of ammunition. She is arrested. The gun and the ammunition are taken away from her. She had fired the gun a lot, was familiar with it, taken away from her. She gets let out of jail. That morning she goes into a gun shop and buys a Smith & Wesson 38 Special. That's why California now has a waiting period. All right? Got to do something next time it happens, Can't find out the model. Everybody tells you, Smith & Wesson, 38 Special. She loads the gun. She is across the street when Gerald Ford's coming out of a hotel. She gets up, aims for a headshot. Pow! Bullet goes past Ford, hits the hotel wall, bounces down, hits the groin of a cab driver. Some people are just lucky. All right? Next to her is a Marine, Vietnam veteran. Grabs her hand, grabs the gun, knocks her down. Everybody swarms on her. They take her into custody. Okay? The FBI takes her pistol and does a test on it. At 44 feet, the actual range, point of aim, point of impact is 6 inches to the left. She had good sight picture, good sight alignment, trigger squeeze. She just never zeroed that gun. So Ford lucked out. The Marine that knocked down the gun, he should have been made a hero. Everything else. They did some background on him and decided to chill on him. It's a shame. He was a Vietnam veteran, a Marine, and a gay activist. So part 3, the guy did not get, he got a letter from the president thanking him for helping out, but no visit to the White House, no, none of the other stuff. Now, Squeaky Fromm's pistol is in the Ford Museum. The pistol got sent to the Ford Museum, so it's there. Sarah Jane Moore's pistol, nobody has a picture of it, model designation, or anything else. So I don't know what possibly happened to that particular gun. The last one we're going to deal with is Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan, getting his handgun, the handgun that was used by Hinckley, remember his elevator definitely didn't go to the top floor. He used a Rome revolver. Now, here's the problem, guys. When it comes to gun collectors, to get your hands on a Rome, it's a real problem. It's like going to a connoisseur of fine wines, going into his basement, seeing his wine rack and going, do you have any Boone's Farm apple? Okay. Anyway, he had a 22, an RG-14. This is an earlier model. It's an El Cheapo pistol, 22. The ammunition he used, though, was exotic. He had exploders. But they don't work. It was a marketing idea. They just don't work. The bullet that entered the president actually ricocheted off the inside of the limousine door. So if it was an exploder, it should have went right there. It didn't. It hit the door and bounced into the president. And of course, Reagan survived. And Hinckley got declared mentally ill. And I think he's been released now in the custody of his mother or whatever. So we have up here, if anybody wants to look at, the type of firearms that were used. This is, again, not designed to honor assassins or to give somebody, sitting there at home watching this going, Trump, 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 okay? Becoming president of the United States, you automatically become a target. That's just a reality. When Obama got elected, I had people swearing, some white supremacist is going to get him. So I said, whoever gets elected president, the wackos immediately make him a target. When I was majoring in psychology, we had to go to the mental hospital. And I remember one time they were telling us, he says, we get people who think they're the president. That's not bad. What do you mean it's not bad? He goes, if one guy thinks he's the president, he'll make the others members of his cabinet. But when two guys think they're president, you have fights in the mental ward. So. All right. This is designed to be a quick presentation because ladies first. Tom, ready to serve? Yeah. Ladies first. Let's see.
See my president down in a bag. Unless you want.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and consider becoming a Patreon member for the ASP. Please check out the ASP Patreon page.